What's up? My name is Ken Dumbo, the MC with the sauce. Don't forget to subscribe to J. Cool.
Rwanda versus South Africa, rising tensions over DRC conflict. Is a war on the horizon? Welcome to Africa. In today's video, we're analyzing the rising tensions between Rwanda and South Africa over their involvement in the Democratic Republic of Congo's ongoing conflict. With leaders accusing each other and diplomatic channels strained, we look at what's at stake for the region and the potential risks of a broader conflict. Stay tuned as we break down the critical factors fueling this crisis, compare it with past African conflicts, and consider what steps could lead to peace. The escalating conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, has ignited a significant diplomatic rift between Rwanda and South Africa, raising concerns about potential military confrontation. This video provides a critical analysis of the situation, compares it with other African conflicts, and examines the latest developments. Background: the DRC conflict and the M23 rebellion. The DRC has endured prolonged instability, particularly in its eastern regions, due to armed groups vying for control over mineral-rich territories. A notable player is the March 23 movement, M23, a rebel group predominantly composed of ethnic Tutsi fighters. The M23 has launched multiple offensives since 2012, with a significant resurgence in early 2022. Reports indicate that Rwanda has provided support to the M23, a claim that Rwanda denies. Recent developments: escalation of tensions. In January 2025, the M23 advanced towards Goma, the largest city in eastern DRC, leading to intense clashes with Congolese forces. The situation escalated when M23 rebels claimed control of Goma, prompting the Congolese government to sever diplomatic ties with Rwanda, accusing it of supporting the rebels. In response, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa condemned the M23's actions and the alleged involvement of the Rwanda Defense Force, RDF, emphasizing South Africa's commitment to peacekeeping in the region. President Paul Kagame of Rwanda vehemently denied these allegations, accusing South African officials of distorting the truth and spreading lies. He further criticized the Southern African Development Community, SADC mission in the DRC, SAME-DRC, labeling it a belligerent force collaborating with groups hostile to Rwanda. Comparative analysis: Africa-wide context. The tensions between Rwanda and South Africa mirror broader regional dynamics in Africa, where conflicts often involve multiple nations with overlapping interests. For instance, the Second Congo War, 1998-2003, saw 9 African countries and over 20 armed groups engaged in a complex conflict, highlighting the challenges of regional peacekeeping and the risks of escalation. Similarly, the conflict in the Horn of Africa, particularly the Ethiopian Tigray War, 2020-2022, involved neighboring countries and international actors, leading to a humanitarian crisis and regional instability. These examples underscore the delicate balance required in peacekeeping missions and the potential for diplomatic disputes to escalate into broader conflicts. Latest developments and international response. The international community has expressed deep concern over the escalating tensions. The United Nations Security Council convened to discuss the crisis, emphasizing the need for a ceasefire and the protection of civilians. The African Union, AU Peace and Security Council also held an emergency meeting, focusing on obtaining a ceasefire and urging all parties to engage in dialogue. In the DRC, the situation remains dire, with hospitals overwhelmed by casualties and widespread displacement of civilians. The International Committee of the Red Cross has expressed alarm over the potential release of dangerous pathogens from a laboratory in Goma due to ongoing fighting. The path forward. The escalating tensions between Rwanda and South Africa over the DRC conflict highlight the fragile nature of regional peace and the complexities of international involvement in African conflicts. It is imperative for the international community to facilitate dialogue between the parties, support peacekeeping efforts, and address the underlying issues fueling the conflict to prevent further escalation and promote lasting stability in the region. The risk of escalation: a regional powder keg. The rhetoric between Presidents Kagame and Ramaphosa continues to exacerbate the potential for a full-blown confrontation. As Rwanda and South Africa exchange sharp statements, their actions on the ground in the DRC and the broader region will determine whether the situation remains a diplomatic spat or spirals into a dangerous military conflict. Rwanda, which shares borders with the DRC, has long been involved in the security dynamics of the eastern DRC. This includes alleged support for various rebel groups, including the M23, a claim that has been consistently denied by Kagame. However, Kagame's accusations against South Africa's peacekeeping role as a belligerent force further complicate an already volatile situation. This direct challenge to South Africa's peacekeeping mission under the Southern African Development Community, SADC, could destabilize not only bilateral relations, but also regional cooperation efforts in stabilizing the DRC. South Africa, with its significant military presence in the region, may interpret Kagame's remarks as an affront to its role as a peacemaker in Africa. If these tensions continue to rise, the possibility of proxy conflicts in the DRC, where both countries exert influence through armed factions, could become a serious threat. The risks of further militarization of the DRC, where local militias, rebel groups, and national forces already operate with impunity, would only intensify the situation. This scenario could trigger an arms race in the region, as neighboring countries such as Uganda and Burundi may also involve themselves in the ongoing power struggle, pushing the DRC further into chaos. Furthermore, regional security could be threatened if Rwanda or South Africa chooses to take unilateral military action, either directly or through proxy groups. The Congolese army, already overstretched and under-resourced, would likely struggle to contain additional foreign military interventions. Such interventions would undermine the already fragile governance structures within the DRC, contributing to an ongoing humanitarian disaster and making peace even more elusive. The role of international actors, a call for diplomacy and engagement. The international community must act decisively to prevent further escalation. The United Nations, African Union, AU, and SADC have a significant role to play, not only as mediators, but also as active participants in fostering dialogue. However, their ability to enforce peace is limited without the cooperation of both Rwanda and South Africa, two influential regional powers with contrasting approaches to the DRC crisis. The African Union, with its long-standing mandate to resolve conflicts on the continent, must urgently prioritize the DRC crisis, making it a focal point for diplomatic engagement. An enhanced AU mediation process would need to involve key stakeholders, including regional actors like Angola, Uganda, and Tanzania, who have historically been involved in DRC peace efforts. Importantly, efforts should focus on fostering constructive dialogue between Rwanda and South Africa, as both countries must de-escalate the situation through direct negotiations, not just public statements. The United Nations must also bolster its presence in the region, particularly through its peacekeeping operations under MONUSCO, United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the DRC. MONUSCO's role in de-escalating the conflict has been contentious, with some arguing that the mission has failed to address the root causes of the violence effectively. Increasing the mission's scope and ensuring that MONUSCO can operate without undue political interference from either Rwanda or South Africa could help curb the violence and facilitate dialogue among the parties involved. Furthermore, the United States, European Union, and other global powers must leverage diplomatic channels to push both Rwanda and South Africa toward a peaceful resolution. Economic sanctions or military embargoes may be necessary as a tool to incentivize cooperation, although such measures risk exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in the DRC. The DRC's future, a broader context of instability. The crisis in the DRC is not an isolated event but part of a broader pattern of instability across the African continent. From the ongoing civil war in Ethiopia to the insurgencies in Mali and Burkina Faso, Africa's conflicts often involve complex interstate dynamics where regional powers assert their influence in the name of security, political gains, or economic interests. The situation in the DRC is emblematic of this wider challenge, where regional rivalries intertwine with local conflicts, making it increasingly difficult to achieve peace. In the context of South Africa and Rwanda, both countries face domestic pressures that influence their foreign policies. President Kagame's strong rhetoric, for instance, plays well with domestic audiences in Rwanda, where national pride and security are paramount. Similarly, Ramaphosa's focus on peacekeeping and his condemnation of Rwanda's role in the DRC resonates with South Africans concerned about the safety of their soldiers and the country's global standing. While both countries may have legitimate concerns about security, the path to peace lies not in escalating hostilities but in seeking common ground. If the two leaders can focus on collaborative diplomatic initiatives, they may not only prevent further escalation, but also set a precedent for resolving similar crises in the future. A de-escalation process could include confidence-building measures, such as ceasefires, the withdrawal of foreign forces, and international monitoring of peace agreements. The fear of war between Rwanda and South Africa, although significant, must be kept in perspective. There is still room for dialogue, and history has shown that African countries can and have found peaceful resolutions to even the most complex conflicts. For instance, the resolution of the Burundi crisis in the late 1990s and the post-apartheid reconciliation in South Africa serve as examples of Africa's ability to navigate conflict and heal wounds. However, if the current situation spirals out of control, the DRC will once again become a hotspot for proxy wars and international intervention, perpetuating a cycle of violence that could overshadow Africa's hopes for peace and stability. The responsibility of both regional powers and the international community is to prevent such an outcome. The risk of prolonged conflict, economic and humanitarian implications. As tensions escalate between Rwanda and South Africa over their roles in the DRC conflict, the economic and humanitarian impact of such a confrontation would be devastating, not only for the DRC but for the broader Great Lakes region and beyond. The DRC, already one of the poorest countries in the world, has suffered from decades of conflict. The ongoing violence exacerbates its fragile economic conditions, crippling its infrastructure and deterring foreign investment. A potential military confrontation between two powerful African nations like Rwanda and South Africa could destabilize the region further, leading to more displacement of civilians, worsening humanitarian conditions, and even a decline in global trade. The situation would also strain the efforts of the United Nations and humanitarian organizations working in the region. Already, thousands of civilians have been killed or displaced by the violence, with reports of widespread atrocities and the destruction of villages. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, over 5.5 million people in the DRC have been displaced due to the conflict. A war involving Rwanda and South Africa could lead to an even greater exodus of refugees, overwhelming neighboring countries such as Uganda, Burundi, and Tanzania. These countries are already struggling with their own economic challenges and would find it increasingly difficult to manage a large influx of refugees. The role of regional economic organizations. In addition to the political and diplomatic efforts required, regional economic organizations such as the East African Community, EAC, and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, must also take a more proactive role in addressing the conflict. These organizations could serve as a platform for dialogue between Rwanda and South Africa, helping to prevent further escalation. Both EAC and SADC have a vested interest in maintaining regional stability, as any conflict between Rwanda and South Africa would disrupt trade and cooperation within these organizations. Rwanda, as a member of EAC, and South Africa, a prominent member of SADC, have significant economic influence in their respective regions. A breakdown in relations between these two countries could result in the erosion of regional integration efforts and stifle the economic growth these organizations have worked hard to achieve. The DRC, despite its challenges, holds immense economic potential due to its vast natural resources, including cobalt, copper, and diamonds. Regional economic stability would help unlock this potential, benefiting countries such as Rwanda and South Africa, whose economies are interdependent on the broader regional dynamics. However, an ongoing or escalating conflict would undermine these efforts, halting trade routes, preventing investment, and diverting resources away from development into military spending. The role of civil society and local populations, civil society organizations, and local populations in both Rwanda and South Africa also have a critical role to play in de-escalating tensions. In both countries, grassroots movements, advocacy groups, and peace organizations can serve as influential actors, encouraging dialogue, promoting peace-building initiatives, and reminding leaders of the broader consequences of continued conflict. In Rwanda, the memory of the 1994 genocide still resonates deeply with the population, and any conflict involving the country's military could stoke nationalist sentiments and fears of ethnic violence. On the other hand, South Africa's post-apartheid ethos of reconciliation and peace may make the South African populace more resistant to military involvement, especially given the sacrifices made during the apartheid struggle. Thus, it is crucial that civil society and the media in both countries work to keep their leaders accountable and push for peaceful resolutions. In the DRC, the voices of local communities, including indigenous groups and displaced persons, must also be part of the conversation. Their experiences and desires for peace and stability should be central to any diplomatic process, as they are the most affected by the ongoing violence. Local leaders, community groups, and civil society organizations in the DRC have a wealth of knowledge regarding the realities on the ground and should be included in peace talks, not just as bystanders but as active participants. A call for multilateral diplomacy, reinvigorating past peace processes. Looking ahead, the international community must prioritize multilateral diplomacy to diffuse tensions between Rwanda and South Africa and to ensure that peace efforts in the DRC remain on track. Efforts like the Luanda and Nairobi peace processes, led by regional powers and supported by international organizations, must be revived and strengthened. These processes have already laid the groundwork for a potential peace deal, but their implementation has often been stymied by external factors, including regional rivalries and the involvement of foreign armed groups. The United Nations, through its Special Envoy for the Great Lakes region, should act as a neutral mediator in the discussions between Rwanda, South Africa, and the DRC. The involvement of international organizations such as the African Union, AU, SADC, and even the European Union could help pressure all parties to return to the negotiating table. Multilateral pressure could also reduce the risk of a military confrontation, as countries may be more willing to engage in dialogue if they see a unified international stance. Moreover, past African peace processes, such as the Arusha Accords that helped end the civil war in Burundi, should be studied for lessons that can be applied to the DRC. The power of regional diplomacy, backed by international support, is vital in achieving lasting peace. In the case of Rwanda and South Africa, any lasting resolution must be built on mutual understanding and respect for each other's security concerns. It is only through these means that peace in the DRC and the broader Great Lakes region can be achieved. Reinforcing regional stability, the need for comprehensive security sector reform. One of the critical areas that require attention in the wake of the escalating tensions between Rwanda and South Africa is the security sector reform in the DRC and the surrounding region. Both Rwanda and South Africa, as prominent players in the conflict, have emphasized their concerns about national security. However, a comprehensive solution to the DRC crisis must address the root causes of insecurity, which are deeply embedded in the political, military, and social fabric of the country. The Congolese military, the FARDC, Armed Forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo, has long struggled with issues of capacity, corruption, and inadequate training. Their inability to effectively protect civilian populations and counter rebel groups such as the M23 has been a major factor in the persistence of violence. Security sector reform in the DRC is essential to strengthening the country's ability to maintain peace and protect its citizens. A professional, well-equipped, and accountable military force would help build trust with neighboring countries, including Rwanda and Uganda, which have historically been involved in the region's instability. Moreover, the security situation in the DRC is complicated by the presence of foreign-backed militias and rebel groups that operate across borders. These armed groups often act as proxies for neighboring states, or are linked to criminal enterprises seeking control over the region's vast mineral resources. Tackling the issue of these militias requires a concerted effort by both the DRC government and its regional neighbors, including Rwanda, Uganda, and South Africa. Regional cooperation on security matters, such as intelligence sharing and joint military operations, could help to dismantle these armed groups and ensure that their support bases are cut off. A regional security framework, possibly through the framework of the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region, ICGLR, could help build mutual trust and provide a platform for the DRC and its neighbors to cooperate on addressing the underlying security challenges. This would also necessitate stronger political will to combat cross-border militias and hold accountable any foreign governments supporting destabilizing forces in the region. The role of regional diplomacy and the African Union regional diplomacy will be a crucial tool in de-escalating the situation. In addition to engaging the United Nations and the international community, Rwanda, South Africa, and the DRC must make a concerted effort to resolve their differences through dialogue. The African Union, AU, has a history of mediating conflicts on the continent, such as in Sudan and Somalia, and must step up its involvement in the Great Lakes region. The AU should facilitate a dialogue between Rwanda, South Africa, and the DRC, bringing together not only the governments but also civil society and other key stakeholders, including women, youth, and displaced persons, whose voices are often marginalized in peace processes. The African Union's efforts should focus on promoting a shared understanding of the region's security dynamics and finding common ground between Rwanda and South Africa. The AU could also play a vital role in monitoring ceasefire agreements, ensuring that they are respected by all parties involved. To this end, a robust peacekeeping force might be needed, but it should operate under the umbrella of the AU rather than the UN to ensure regional ownership and commitment to the peace process. South Africa, with its role as a key player in SADC and its experience in post-apartheid peacebuilding, has the potential to serve as a bridge between Rwanda and the DRC. South Africa's commitment to peacekeeping in the region must be recognized, but it must also be mindful of Rwanda's security concerns. Diplomatic flexibility and a willingness to engage in compromise will be essential to avoid further escalation. The economic dimension of the crisis, regional economic impact and solutions. The ongoing conflict in the DRC, fueled by external interventions and internal power struggles, has significant economic repercussions, not just for the DRC, but for the entire region. The Great Lakes region is rich in resources, including some of the world's largest deposits of cobalt, copper, and diamonds. These resources are critical to the global economy, particularly in the context of the green energy transition, where cobalt is essential for battery production. However, the ongoing conflict has prevented the DRC from fully capitalizing on these resources, and the economic benefits remain largely untapped due to insecurity and instability. For Rwanda, the instability in the DRC affects its trade routes and disrupts its regional economic integration efforts. As a landlocked country, Rwanda depends heavily on its access to ports in neighboring countries like Uganda and Tanzania for the export of goods. The conflict in eastern DRC, if it continues to intensify, could hamper trade in the region, leading to increased transportation costs and delays. South Africa, as the continent's most industrialized economy, also faces economic consequences from the conflict. As a key player in SADC, South Africa's engagement in the peace process is not just a matter of political stability, it is also an economic imperative. The longer the DRC remains unstable, the more South African businesses could face disruptions, particularly in sectors such as mining, agriculture, and infrastructure development, which are vital to both countries' economies. To mitigate the economic risks of the ongoing conflict, regional economic cooperation must be prioritized. The East African Community, EAC, and SADC should work together to maintain stable trade routes, ensure the safety of cross-border commerce, and promote regional infrastructure development. Efforts to foster regional economic integration should not be abandoned in the face of conflict, as economic stability could help provide the foundation for political stability. A stable economic environment could also help reduce the appeal of armed groups by providing alternative sources of livelihood for those who are caught up in the violence. The human cost of war, a humanitarian crisis in the making. The humanitarian cost of continued conflict in the DRC cannot be overstated. As the tensions between Rwanda and South Africa grow, the situation for the Congolese people continues to deteriorate. The violence in the eastern DRC has already displaced millions, and the fear is that an escalation in tensions could trigger a new wave of displacement across the region. Displaced people often face horrendous conditions in overcrowded refugee camps with inadequate access to food, water, healthcare, and education. The escalation of tensions between Rwanda and South Africa risks turning the DRC into an even larger humanitarian catastrophe. Children, women, and the elderly are often the most vulnerable, and without a diplomatic resolution, the situation will only worsen. International humanitarian organizations, such as the International Red Cross and Médecins Sans Frontières, are doing critical work in providing aid to those affected, but their resources are limited, and access to conflict zones is often hindered by the violence. The importance of dialogue and long-term solutions. As Rwanda and South Africa continue their war of words, the need for a diplomatic solution has never been more urgent. The risk of military escalation, both in the DRC and in the broader Great Lakes region, remains high. For the sake of peace and stability, both countries must de-escalate tensions and return to the negotiating table. The international community, the African Union, and regional organizations like SADC and EAC must actively push for dialogue, facilitate peace-building initiatives, and provide the necessary support to prevent further violence. Additionally, a focus on security sector reform in the DRC, regional economic cooperation, and addressing the humanitarian crisis must form the basis of a long-term solution to the conflict. The stakes could not be higher. The future of the DRC and the broader Great Lakes region is on the line. For now, the world waits to see whether Rwanda and South Africa will choose the path of diplomacy or whether tensions will escalate further, dragging the region into a prolonged and devastating war. The international community must act swiftly and decisively to help prevent such a tragic outcome. The path to sustainable peace. Lessons from Africa's past conflicts. While the current tensions between Rwanda and South Africa are deeply concerning, there are lessons from Africa's past conflicts that could inform a peaceful resolution. Many African countries have faced internal and external conflicts, but through determined diplomacy and regional cooperation, they have successfully moved from war to peace. The Burundi model, regional mediation and reconciliation. Burundi's experience with conflict resolution offers valuable insights into how a resolution might unfold in the Great Lakes region. The Arusha Accords of 2000, which ended a brutal civil war in Burundi, provide a case study of successful regional diplomacy. The accord was brokered by Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere, with significant support from the United Nations, the African Union, and other regional actors. It involved all key stakeholders in the conflict, including rebel groups, the government, and civil society, and it focused on creating a broad-based power-sharing arrangement. The implementation of the Arusha Accords led to the formation of a transitional government, which helped stabilize the country. Despite ongoing challenges, Burundi made progress in rebuilding its institutions and promoting national reconciliation. This process was not without its setbacks, but it highlights the importance of inclusive peace processes and regional mediation. In the context of the Rwanda-South Africa tensions, a similar model of inclusive dialogue, involving not only the governments but also civil society organizations and regional stakeholders, could help bring about a lasting peace. Both Rwanda and South Africa, along with the DRC, need to engage in a constructive dialogue, addressing not just the immediate military concerns, but also the underlying political, social, and economic issues that fuel the conflict. South Sudan. The role of international support in peace-building South Sudan, which gained independence from Sudan in 2011, serves as another important example of how regional and international actors can contribute to peace-building efforts. After the outbreak of a civil war in 2013, the African Union, the United Nations, and other international partners stepped in to facilitate peace talks between the warring factions. The peace agreement signed in 2015 was initially fragile, but continued international support, combined with regional pressure, has helped maintain a fragile peace. South Sudan's experience demonstrates the importance of sustained international engagement in post-conflict situations. International actors, including the United Nations and various donor countries, provided crucial financial support for reconstruction, humanitarian aid, and the establishment of new political institutions. Similarly, the DRC conflict would benefit from consistent international engagement, particularly in the post-conflict rebuilding phase. For Rwanda and South Africa, both countries could benefit from international financial and technical assistance to help stabilize the region and rebuild the DRC's infrastructure, which is critical to the success of any peace process. Moreover, international support would be necessary to ensure that the DRC's political institutions can function effectively and that the country can manage its natural resources in a way that benefits all its citizens, not just armed groups and foreign actors. The role of women and youth in peace building. Another key element to consider in the Rwanda-South Africa standoff is the involvement of women and youth in the peace process. In many African conflicts, including the civil wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone, women and children have been disproportionately affected by violence. Yet women have also played critical roles in peace-building efforts. The case of Liberia, where women led a peace movement that helped bring an end to the civil war in 2003, stands out as a powerful example of the impact women can have in conflict resolution. In the DRC, the role of women is particularly significant. The ongoing violence has had devastating effects on women, with sexual violence used as a weapon of war by many armed groups. A peace process that does not adequately address the needs of women and girls is unlikely to succeed. Women's participation in peace negotiations and post-conflict rebuilding efforts will be essential for achieving sustainable peace. Similarly, the youth of the region must also be given a voice in the peace process. Africa's youth bulge is often seen as a demographic challenge, but it can also be a powerful force for change. In recent years, youth movements across Africa have mobilized political and social change, and their energy and commitment to peace could be instrumental in resolving the DRC crisis. Creating platforms for young people to engage in peace building and to express their concerns about the future of the region is critical for long-term stability. International solidarity, leveraging global power for a regional peace. The involvement of international actors in the Rwanda-South Africa conflict is essential, not just for mediation but also for ensuring that all parties follow through on their commitments. The United Nations, the African Union, and other regional organizations have a key role to play in facilitating a peace process, but they cannot do it alone. Major global powers such as the United States, China, and the European Union must use their influence to encourage peace and stability in the region. For example, the European Union's involvement in peace building in Africa, particularly in regions like the Sahel, has been crucial in supporting stability. The EU's commitment to regional peace can be replicated in the Great Lakes region. By increasing diplomatic pressure, encouraging dialogue between Rwanda and South Africa, and providing economic incentives for peace, the international community can help ensure that both countries prioritize peace over military confrontation. The need for long-term commitment to development. Beyond military and diplomatic solutions, a successful peace process must focus on long-term development strategies that address the underlying causes of conflict. In the DRC, a failure to address economic disparities, ethnic tensions, and the control of natural resources will likely lead to the resurgence of violence. Rwanda and South Africa, as key players in the region, must work together to help the DRC build its economic infrastructure, promote good governance, and create opportunities for youth employment. Development initiatives must also extend to the broader Great Lakes region. By creating economic opportunities and fostering cooperation between Rwanda, South Africa, Uganda, and the DRC, the region can build the foundation for lasting peace. This will require a multidimensional approach, with investments in education, healthcare, infrastructure, and governance. The success of the peace process depends on the ability of all actors, regional powers, international organizations, civil society, and local communities, to work together. It is only through a comprehensive approach that addresses not only security concerns, but also socio-economic factors that long-term peace can be achieved. A new model for regional security cooperation. One of the most critical outcomes of the ongoing tensions between Rwanda and South Africa over the DRC conflict could be the emergence of a new model for regional security cooperation. The current security architecture in the Great Lakes region, while well-intentioned, has proven inadequate in preventing conflict escalation and addressing the complexities of the DRC situation. A new model for security cooperation would require the active participation of both Rwanda and South Africa, along with other key players such as Uganda, Tanzania, and even Kenya. These nations must engage in a collaborative security framework that not only addresses the immediate threats posed by armed groups and insurgents, but also seeks to create a long-term mechanism for conflict prevention and resolution. The formation of a robust regional security mechanism, potentially under the auspices of the African Union, AU, or the East African Community, EAC, could focus on several key areas. First, it would prioritize the joint defense of borders to prevent the cross-border flow of rebel fighters and illicit arms, which is a significant factor in the ongoing conflict in the DRC. Second, it would work to curb the activities of armed groups operating in the region, particularly those with foreign backing, who often exploit the lack of security to control valuable natural resources. Furthermore, such a framework would include the establishment of conflict early warning systems that could help regional actors quickly identify signs of emerging conflicts and intervene before they escalate. By investing in intelligence sharing and joint training exercises, Rwanda, South Africa, and their neighbors could foster greater trust and cooperation, reducing the likelihood of military confrontations and allowing for timely, coordinated responses to security challenges. The importance of political will, resolving differences for peace. While diplomacy and regional cooperation are essential for de-escalating tensions, the fundamental issue remains political will. Both Rwanda and South Africa must demonstrate a genuine commitment to peace and stability in the region. For Rwanda, this means addressing the underlying security concerns that it perceives from armed groups in eastern DRC and ensuring that its legitimate interests are respected by regional actors. For South Africa, it means balancing its role as a peacekeeper in the region with the need to protect its own citizens and soldiers, particularly after the recent loss of South African military personnel. The political climate in both countries also plays a significant role in shaping the willingness of their leaders to engage in dialogue. Kagame's strongman leadership style, rooted in Rwanda's post-genocide recovery, has often been characterized by a robust defense of Rwanda's sovereignty, which may make diplomatic concessions difficult. However, as Rwanda's security concerns in the DRC are tied to the stability of the region, Kagame may find it in the country's best interest to engage in multilateral discussions for the sake of long-term stability. For Ramaphosa, who has been under pressure domestically due to the political and economic challenges facing South Africa, taking a firm stance on the DRC conflict could enhance his image as a defender of peace and stability. Yet it is crucial that South Africa's approach remains balanced, as any overt military confrontation with Rwanda could lead to significant blowback, both regionally and internationally. Both leaders will have to navigate their domestic political landscapes carefully, balancing national security concerns with the realities of regional cooperation. It is only through a genuine commitment to diplomacy and regional stability that tensions can begin to subside and a peace process can take root. Engaging the global community, leveraging international diplomacy. While regional actors play the primary role in resolving the tensions between Rwanda and South Africa, the international community, including major powers such as the United States, China, and the European Union, can play a critical supporting role in facilitating peace. International diplomatic pressure can help both Rwanda and South Africa move toward a peaceful resolution by providing incentives for cooperation and disincentives for conflict escalation. The United Nations UN Security Council has the authority to impose sanctions or take other measures to discourage aggression between the two nations. However, this would require careful coordination among the permanent members of the Security Council, many of whom have their own interests in the region. The UN must ensure that its actions are aimed at de-escalating tensions and preventing the outbreak of a larger conflict, not exacerbating the situation through heavy-handed intervention. Similarly, the European Union and the United States can contribute by providing diplomatic support for peace initiatives, offering technical and financial assistance for peace-building and reconstruction efforts, and facilitating dialogue between key regional actors. The economic leverage that international actors possess can be used to encourage both Rwanda and South Africa to engage in good faith negotiations, ensuring that their political and economic interests are balanced with the overarching goal of peace. In addition to diplomatic engagement, international humanitarian organizations must continue to address the immediate needs of the populations caught in the crossfire of this conflict. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, and other aid agencies must be given full access to conflict zones to provide essential services, including medical care, food, shelter, and education, to those displaced by the violence. Ensuring the safety and dignity of civilians must remain a central priority in any peace process. Regional economic integration, a path to long-term peace. The potential for long-term peace in the Great Lakes region hinges not only on political solutions but also on economic integration. Economic interdependence is one of the most powerful tools for promoting stability and preventing conflict. If Rwanda, South Africa, and their regional neighbors can build mutually beneficial economic partnerships, the incentives for conflict will diminish. The establishment of free trade zones and infrastructure projects that link countries across the region could help to reduce the economic disparities that often fuel conflict. Joint investments in energy, transport, and telecommunications networks could open up new economic opportunities, making the region more resilient to external shocks and less prone to political instability. By fostering economic cooperation, these countries could create a shared vision for the future where regional prosperity is prioritized over military competition. The role of African unity, building a stronger continent. Finally, the tensions between Rwanda and South Africa should serve as a wake-up call for the broader African Union. African unity, a long-standing ideal championed by Pan-African leaders such as Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere, has often been undermined by regional conflicts and national interests. However, the growing recognition of Africa's interconnectedness, politically, economically, and socially, presents an opportunity for the continent to forge a new path toward peace and cooperation. The African Union must redouble its efforts to mediate conflicts, strengthen institutions, and promote a culture of dialogue and compromise. It must also ensure that regional security frameworks are inclusive, transparent, and accountable, addressing not only the security concerns of individual states, but also the broader regional and continental stability. By investing in peaceful conflict resolution, regional integration, and sustainable development, the African Union can help ensure that the Rwanda-South Africa crisis remains a turning point rather than a step backward for African unity. The future of Rwanda-South Africa relations, managing the aftermath. As tensions simmer between Rwanda and South Africa, the post-conflict phase will be just as important as the diplomatic resolution itself. If a peaceful solution is achieved, both countries will face the difficult task of managing their bilateral relations moving forward. While the immediate threat of war might be averted, the underlying mistrust between the two countries could persist, affecting regional stability and cooperation in the long term. Building a positive and cooperative relationship between Rwanda and South Africa will require significant efforts from both sides. First and foremost, there must be a clear acknowledgement of each other's interests and concerns. Rwanda's emphasis on its national security and its role as a regional power in the Great Lakes must be respected, while South Africa's role as a peacekeeper and its commitment to stability in Southern Africa should be valued. The two nations will need to engage in confidence-building measures to restore trust. This could involve bilateral forums for regular communication, transparency in military deployments, and collaborative efforts on regional security issues. Furthermore, both Rwanda and South Africa should explore opportunities for economic cooperation, such as trade agreements, joint infrastructure projects, or resource management initiatives. This would help shift the focus from potential confrontation to mutual benefit, laying the groundwork for a sustainable peace. Engagement with the global community, avoiding isolation. An essential part of managing the aftermath of the crisis will involve Rwanda and South Africa's engagement with the global community. The international community's role in facilitating a peaceful resolution has been crucial, but continued global support will be necessary to ensure that both countries follow through on their commitments. In the case of Rwanda, international stakeholders, particularly the United States and European Union, must continue to engage with Rwanda diplomatically to ensure it remains committed to peace efforts. Rwanda has long been seen as a model for development in Africa, but its involvement in the DRC conflict has drawn criticism and strained its international relations. The international community must recognize Rwanda's legitimate security concerns while also holding it accountable for any destabilizing actions. It will be important for international partners to support Rwanda's economic development and strengthen democratic institutions, as this will contribute to the country's long-term stability and its role as a regional leader. South Africa, as a key member of both SADC and the AU, must continue to strengthen its global partnerships. The country's reputation as a promoter of peace and stability in Africa is vital, and its involvement in the DRC crisis has implications for its diplomatic standing. International support will be essential for helping South Africa recover from any political fallout and ensure that it remains a key player in continental diplomacy. This includes maintaining its leadership role in multilateral forums and peacekeeping missions, where South Africa has built a strong track record. In addition, both countries must recognize the importance of regional organizations like the African Union and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, in maintaining peace and fostering economic growth. By working closely with these bodies, Rwanda and South Africa can ensure that their interests align with broader continental goals, contributing to Africa's long-term prosperity and stability. The role of youth in healing and moving forward. The young people of Rwanda, South Africa, and the broader Great Lakes region will play an integral role in healing the wounds left by conflict and ensuring that tensions do not flare up again. Africa's youth are a dynamic and diverse demographic, capable of contributing to peace-building efforts in ways that have not always been fully appreciated. This generation has grown up in a time of rapid technological advancement, where social media and digital platforms have given them unprecedented access to information and the ability to mobilize quickly. In Rwanda and South Africa, young people can be powerful agents of change. They have the potential to challenge political narratives, promote dialogue, and bridge divides that have existed between the two countries. Through education and youth-focused initiatives, both countries can foster a generation that values peace, dialogue, and cooperation. Programs that engage youth in peace-building activities such as cultural exchanges, workshops on conflict resolution, and collaborative community projects can help break down the historical barriers that have divided Rwanda and South Africa. Additionally, by encouraging the youth to take part in the political process, both countries can ensure that the next generation of leaders is equipped to manage conflicts diplomatically and with a focus on long-term stability. Furthermore, given the economic challenges that both countries face, investing in youth entrepreneurship and employment initiatives could help reduce the appeal of violence and instability. Economic opportunities for young people would create a more resilient society, where future conflicts are less likely to arise from economic despair or disillusionment. Strengthening regional economic development as a long-term solution. The long-term solution to the tensions between Rwanda and South Africa and the broader stability of the DRC lies in regional economic development. As previously mentioned, both Rwanda and South Africa have significant economic roles in their respective regions. If these two countries can find common ground economically, it could form the basis for enduring peace. A renewed focus on regional economic cooperation is essential, not only to improve trade between Rwanda, South Africa, and the DRC, but also to encourage other neighboring countries to participate. The creation of regional infrastructure projects, such as roads, railways, and energy networks, could facilitate trade and integration between these countries. Moreover, these projects would provide employment opportunities for the local populations and help to address some of the underlying economic factors that fuel conflict. Rwanda, with its relatively high growth rates, has become a hub for regional trade and investment. South Africa, as the most industrialized country in Africa, has the potential to be a key partner in helping Rwanda access new markets and invest in critical infrastructure. If Rwanda and South Africa can work together to develop a shared vision for economic growth in the region, they could become the driving force behind a more integrated and prosperous East and Southern Africa. This will require overcoming historical and political differences, but by investing in mutual economic prosperity, Rwanda and South Africa could lay the foundation for a new era of cooperation in the region. Furthermore, this would have a ripple effect on the broader African continent, demonstrating the potential for African countries to work together to achieve collective prosperity and peace. A balanced approach to peace and security. As tensions between Rwanda and South Africa over the DRC conflict continue to unfold, the path to peace will require a careful balancing of diplomatic, economic, and security considerations. Regional cooperation, led by the African Union and supported by the international community, will be essential in de-escalating the situation. At the same time, Both countries must recognize the importance of addressing the underlying factors of conflict, including security concerns, economic disparities, and political tensions. The road to lasting peace will not be easy, but by fostering dialogue, engaging youth, investing in economic development, and focusing on regional security cooperation, Rwanda, South Africa, and the DRC can work together to create a more stable and prosperous future. For now, the world watches closely, hoping that the current tensions will lead to a renewed commitment to peace and cooperation in the heart of Africa. The role of regional power dynamics in peace building. The broader context of regional power dynamics is central to understanding the complex relationship between Rwanda and South Africa in the DRC conflict. The Great Lakes region, encompassing countries like Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, and the DRC, is a delicate geopolitical space with intersecting interests. These countries have historically navigated tensions that stem from ethnic divisions, economic competition, and ideological differences. South Africa, as a continental power, has long positioned itself as a leader in peace and stability in southern Africa. Its influence stretches beyond its borders, as demonstrated by its role in peacekeeping missions, diplomatic negotiations, and efforts to mediate conflicts in countries like Zimbabwe, South Sudan, and the Central African Republic. However, the current crisis in the DRC has put South Africa's peacekeeping credentials to the test. It finds itself on the front lines of the conflict, with the tragic loss of its soldiers raising domestic pressure for a firmer stance. South Africa's military presence in the DRC, under the umbrella of SADC and the United Nations, is framed as part of a larger regional peace effort, but the growing rift with Rwanda complicates this role. On the other hand, Rwanda's strategic positioning in the Great Lakes region, its historical security concerns, and its relative economic success over the past 2 decades make it a formidable regional player. The Rwandan government has a deep interest in maintaining stability in the DRC, primarily because it sees armed groups operating in the eastern DRC as direct threats to its national security. Rwanda has also been a key player in the DRC's conflict dynamics, with accusations of military involvement in the eastern DRC, particularly with the M23 rebel group, further complicating its relationships with neighbors and the international community. Rwanda's government, led by President Kagame, has consistently presented itself as a key peacekeeper and defender of regional stability, although its critics accuse it of pursuing a hegemonic agenda at the expense of its neighbors. This rivalry between Rwanda and South Africa underscores the broader struggle for influence in Africa, particularly within the framework of the African Union, AU, and other regional organizations. Both countries are competing not only for strategic influence in the Great Lakes region, but also for prominence within the wider African peace and security architecture. The power struggle between these two countries has the potential to fracture regional cooperation, potentially undermining efforts for collective peace and security. For any peace agreement to be successful, it will require a balance of power, with both countries making significant concessions. This may involve Rwanda accepting the legitimacy of South Africa's role in peacekeeping operations in the DRC, and South Africa acknowledging Rwanda's security concerns in the region. Such a compromise will be difficult to achieve, as both countries have deep-rooted political and security priorities. However, the ability of these two regional powers to find common ground will be a critical factor in determining the future of peace efforts in the DRC and beyond. Building trust between Rwanda and South Africa, the need for dialogue. At the heart of the current crisis is a profound trust deficit between Rwanda and South Africa. Both countries have historically been at odds over their competing interests in the DRC, and the war of words between Presidents Kagame and Ramaphosa only exacerbates the situation. Moving forward, trust-building measures will be essential in stabilizing relations and laying the groundwork for lasting peace. A crucial first step in building trust is to create an open and honest dialogue between Rwanda and South Africa. Diplomatic channels must be re-established and kept open, with both sides committing to regular and transparent communication. This will help to manage misunderstandings, reduce the likelihood of further escalation, and provide a platform for addressing the core issues fueling the conflict. Both governments must also prioritize public diplomacy and engage their respective populations in the peace process. In Rwanda, the leadership can leverage its historical experience in post-genocide reconciliation to engage citizens in a national conversation about peace, security, and regional cooperation. South Africa, with its own complex history of reconciliation and nation-building, must foster a public discourse that emphasizes the importance of regional stability and the shared benefits of peace in the Great Lakes region. Additionally, the engagement of third-party mediators, potentially from within the African Union or other neutral parties, could help guide the dialogue between Rwanda and South Africa. These mediators would not only facilitate direct talks, but also ensure that both parties feel their concerns are being heard and addressed in good faith. Addressing the root causes, the importance of inclusive peace building. Any long-term peace agreement must address the root causes of conflict in the DRC and the Great Lakes region. These causes are not simply the result of political or military disagreements but are deeply embedded in the socio-economic and historical context of the region. In the DRC, competition for control over natural resources, particularly minerals such as cobalt, copper, and coltan, has played a significant role in fueling conflict. These resources are vital to global industries, especially in the technology and renewable energy sectors, which have attracted various foreign and domestic actors seeking to exploit them. Armed groups, both local and foreign-backed, have used the control of these resources as a means of financing their operations, contributing to the cycle of violence. To address this issue, a regional approach that prioritizes the equitable management of natural resources and ensures that they benefit the people of the DRC rather than armed groups or foreign powers is essential. Rwanda and South Africa, along with the DRC and other neighboring countries, must collaborate to ensure that the wealth generated from natural resources is used to promote development and address the root causes of instability. Furthermore, ethnic and identity-based tensions remain a significant driver of conflict in the region. The DRC, with its complex array of ethnic groups, has long struggled with issues of national unity and governance. Rwanda, which shares ethnic ties with some groups in eastern DRC, has been accused of exacerbating these tensions for its own strategic gain. South Africa, with its history of apartheid and reconciliation, can play an important role in facilitating inclusive governance and promoting national unity in the DRC. A truly inclusive peace process must involve all stakeholders, including marginalized communities, women, and youth, who often bear the brunt of the violence. Local civil society organizations in Rwanda, South Africa, and the DRC must be given a platform to voice their concerns and contribute to the peace process. This will ensure that the voices of those most affected by the conflict are not ignored and that any peace agreement reflects the needs and aspirations of the broader population. The role of regional and international economic partnerships. Economic partnerships will play a crucial role in ensuring that the region can recover and rebuild after the conflict. The economic reconstruction of the DRC, as well as the stabilization of the Great Lakes region, will require the active participation of both Rwanda and South Africa, along with international financial institutions such as the World Bank and the African Development Bank. The restoration of peace in the DRC presents an opportunity for Rwanda, South Africa, and their neighbors to invest in joint infrastructure projects such as roads, railways, and energy production, which can facilitate regional integration and trade. The benefits of regional economic cooperation are immense, as they would not only boost the economies of individual countries, but also reduce the incentives for conflict by creating interdependence among states. Rwanda and South Africa must also work to enhance their participation in the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, which aims to boost intra-African trade and reduce barriers to economic integration. By aligning their economic interests and working together to strengthen the continental economy, both countries can play a pivotal role in advancing Africa's economic integration and ensuring long-term stability in the region. The role of diplomatic leadership in the resolution process. During the ongoing crisis, the role of diplomatic leadership becomes even more crucial. The leadership shown by African heads of state, particularly President Kagame of Rwanda and President Ramaphosa of South Africa, will be fundamental in shaping the future of the Great Lakes region. It is essential that both leaders demonstrate not only national strength but also regional foresight, understanding that the future of peace in the region is intertwined with their ability to prioritize diplomacy over military escalation. For President Kagame, embracing the diplomatic process will require balancing Rwanda's legitimate security concerns with the need for regional peace. While Rwanda has consistently portrayed itself as a defender of its sovereignty, this crisis provides an opportunity to showcase Rwanda's ability to lead in peace-building efforts, especially through negotiation and multilateral cooperation. For President Ramaphosa, South Africa's continued leadership role in regional peacekeeping and diplomatic mediation is of utmost importance. The loss of South African soldiers in the DRC must not only spur deeper introspection, but also drive the nation's efforts to be part of a solution that seeks peace without military confrontation. South Africa's legacy of reconciliation, following the end of apartheid, can serve as a guiding model for resolving the current crisis through non-violent means. As key players in African diplomacy, both leaders must understand that the stakes go beyond their individual countries. They are setting a precedent for how Africa handles regional conflicts. By focusing on dialogue, regional cooperation, and security sector reform, they can lead the way in creating a model of peace that is unique to Africa's diverse political and socio-economic landscape. Advising African leaders, the path to long-term stability. To African leaders across the continent, the current crisis between Rwanda and South Africa presents an urgent lesson in the importance of diplomacy, regional cooperation, and commitment to peace. The following pieces of advice are crucial in navigating current and future conflicts. 1. Embrace diplomatic solutions over military confrontation. African leaders must recognize the value of diplomacy as the primary means of resolving conflicts. Military intervention often exacerbates tensions and prolongs suffering for civilians. Political dialogue, peace agreements, and regional frameworks should be prioritized in managing disputes. 2. Strengthen regional security mechanisms. It is vital for African countries to build and sustain regional security frameworks such as the African Standby Force and the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region, ICGLR. These platforms should be equipped to address both conventional military threats and non-traditional security challenges, such as the spread of armed groups and violent extremism. 3. Promote economic integration. Economic stability is directly linked to peace. African leaders must work toward greater economic integration, creating regional trade partnerships that reduce dependency on external powers and offer long-term stability. Strengthening the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, will help to increase intra-African trade, foster job creation, and reduce the likelihood of conflict born out of resource competition. 4. Commit to inclusive governance and justice. It is essential that peace processes include the voices of all stakeholders, particularly marginalized communities, women, and youth. Africa's conflicts are often fueled by political exclusion, ethnic tensions, and economic inequalities. Leaders must ensure that peace agreements are inclusive, just, and address the root causes of conflict. 5. Leverage Pan-Africanism for regional unity. The idea of Pan-Africanism, a united Africa working together for common goals, should guide Africa's approach to peace. Pan-African institutions such as the African Union, AU, must play a more robust role in conflict mediation and post-conflict reconstruction. The unity of African nations, driven by a shared vision for peace and development, will be the foundation for a prosperous future. Summary of key messages. The crisis between Rwanda and South Africa over their roles in the DRC conflict highlights the complexity of African geopolitics and the urgent need for regional cooperation, diplomatic engagement, and multilateral dialogue. The escalating tensions between the two countries underscore the importance of addressing the root causes of conflict, such as security concerns, resource competition, and political instability. A balanced approach that emphasizes diplomacy, security sector reform, and economic cooperation is essential for ensuring long-term peace in the Great Lakes region. The involvement of international stakeholders is necessary to support peace efforts, but African leadership must be at the forefront of the solution. By fostering regional partnerships, promoting inclusive governance, and investing in economic development, Rwanda, South Africa, and their neighbors can create a more stable and prosperous future. Ultimately, African leaders must embrace the lessons of Africa's past conflicts and the importance of diplomacy and unity in resolving disputes. As the crisis in the Great Lakes region continues to unfold, the message is clear. Peace is not a mere absence of conflict, but a commitment to building a future based on cooperation, justice, and sustainable development.
Thanks for tuning in to JQ News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest updates on tech, politics, and everything in between. Until next time, stay cool.